Hello, welcome back. In this tutorial we'll be covering everything to do with reflections. In your PDF manual, this is covered in Studio Magic 2 Chapter 4 Reflections. So you always want to start with a flattened document. This is a flattened JPEG. You have two choices here, entire image or selected subject. We'll start with the entire image and click on Create. As you can see, the reflection has been created. It increased the canvas size and put the reflection here on the bottom. Now this is a very serene, still scene. There isn't really any wind at all, so there wouldn't be that many ripples in the reflection. So we can reduce the ripples even more by dropping it all the way back here, clicking Update. And we might want to introduce just a few more ripples, so I'm just going to bump it up here to 7%, Update. Let's minimize this image, bring up a new one. Now that we're working on a new image, it's a good idea to just click between these two, and that resets the sliders. So let's go ahead, click Create. Now I want to increase the height of the reflection, so I'm going to bump that up, Update. And we can see how much canvas and how it's enlarged the reflection for us here. And if that's a bit too much height, of course, we can just reduce it, drop it back here to about 80, Update. And I may increase the ripples here a little bit, put them up to about 27. Let's minimize this image. When making a reflection of an entire image, it's very important to get the cropping right. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to be on entire image here. I'm going to reset these and then Create. So as we can see here, it's important to crop very close to the bottom of this image in order to get the reflection right. This white line is just something to do with Photoshop. If we zoom in here, we see that it'll disappear. So I'm going to zoom back out. So I'm going to start over. I'm going to reset the settings, and I'm going to grab the crop tool and I'm going to drag it all the way up to the bottom of our arm there. Double click. Now we'll hit Create, and now the reflection works. I'm going to drop this back, the ripples, Update, and I may want to increase the ripples here a little bit. So let's minimize this image. I'm going to reset, Create. Now you can see how the cooling slider works. I'm going to add a little more cooling here to the reflection, Update. If you want less cooling, drop it back, Update. I'll minimize this image. In this next image, the ballerina was cut out using the By-LayerCake Studio Magic cutout panel. In this case, we're going to click on Selected Subject and make certain that she is selected in the Layers palette, Create. Now you may want to go into the image and move the reflection up a little bit. Before you do that, you want to make sure that Auto Select is selected and Group, not Layer. What I'm referring to with the group is the reflection is in a group here. So now when I go in here, click, I can move the reflection anywhere I want to if I want to just move it up a little bit. And we'll be covering this as well a little bit later on with the Auto Select and Group and Layer. And if we zoom in a little bit here, see a bit more of this. I may bump the intensity up some, Update. Let's bring up a new image. In this image, everything is on its own layer. We've got the clouds up there, the boat, and the birds. The birds and the clouds are part of Studio Magic 2. Now we're going to create reflections for each of these elements. I'm going to start with the boat. You want to be on Selected Subject. I'm going to go back and forth here so we reset them, Create. Let's zoom in, resize this. As this is a very calm day, I'm going to drop the ripples back, Update. Now if I want to move the reflection up a bit, as I mentioned before, you want to have Auto Select selected and Group, because all of that reflection information is inside a group here, and we want to move the whole group up, not just a layer. So I want to make sure we're on Group. I'm going to now move it up a little bit. Another tip for moving the reflection around, apart from clicking and dragging inside the image, is to have the group selected as we've got it here, and you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move it up a few pixels at a time, and sometimes that's a more accurate way to get it exactly where you want it. Now I may even drop these ripples back a little bit more. Next, I'm going to apply a shadow to the clouds, and this is where, once again, the auto select comes in. If you drop it back to layer now, and I click on the clouds, look what it does. It immediately selects the right layer for me, the clouds layer here in the layers palette. I'm going to reset this. We're on selected subject, create. Now I want to move the clouds down onto the water here. I'm going to change this to group, drag them down, position them. I'll reduce the ripples. I'm going to move the reflection over a little bit, reposition it, apply a little bit of blur. Now we'll apply a reflection to the birds. I'm going to go up to our auto select layer, select the birds, reset these, create. Now I have collapsed these groups of the other reflections that we were working with here just to keep the layers palette more organized. We're working with the reflection of the gulls here, so that one's open. Another way to work with selecting the reflections here, in this case it's for the birds, is to turn off auto select. Have the layer selected that we want. We've got the group here for the birds, and now I can just click in anywhere and it's going to grab that bird reflection for me, and I'm just going to reposition them here. Now you could drop the ripples back on the birds, but I'm going to leave it there. There's going to be more distortion on flying birds than there would be with just a stationary boat. And there's our finished image. Let's look at mirrored image. Mirror image is located inside this drop down here. Just click on it to get to it. Mirror reflections work best in indoor locations on reflective surfaces such as linoleum or marble. So here the ballerina was cut out with Studio Magic 1. We're going to click on selected subject, create. You can make any changes to the height or the intensity. I'm going to drop the intensity back a bit, update. If we look in here and see what the mirror reflection has given us, it's given us a shadow and the reflection. And if we look in the layers palette, we'll see that this has been put into a group for us that we can open and close just by toggling there. So now if I want to move the reflection or the shadow separately, you want to make certain that you've got auto select selected and layer. And that way I can go in, I can click on the reflection and move that around. I'm going to put it back where it was originally, or if I want to select the shadow, I can just click on it and move it. I'm going to put that back. Now if you had group selected, I would be able to move the whole group around. But it's very rare that you want to move the whole thing together, so I'm going to put that back. Now you could select the shadow layer here and increase the intensity of the shadow if you wanted to, or of course alternatively you could turn it off. I'm going to leave it on, but as we can see how this works with different reflective surfaces. This is a black tile floor, and down here is linoleum. Let's bring up a different image. So you could toggle between these two to reset the sliders here, and now we want to make sure that the car here is selected, create. And now I'm on auto select layer. I'm going to move the shadow up a little bit here and then move the reflection up as well. And that concludes this tutorial, Chapter 4 Reflections. I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial, Chapter 5 Lighting Effects. Thank you.